Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled are actor Jason Antoon and singer-songwriter Chuck Pelletier. Actor, director, writer Jason Antoon is a native Californian, born and raised in West LA. He graduated from Notre Dame High School, then headed east to Carnegie Mellon University, where he earned his BFA in drama. Then it was to New York for several years. He's been in film, on TV, and especially the stage, when at Lincoln Center he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor in the musical. Why did you go to New York from Carnegie Mellon and not come back to LA?
Because I grew up in LA and I wanted to be a New York actor.
And that
Well, I
was...
studied in theater too, so I studied at Carnegie Mellon for 4 years, so the best thing to do is go to New York City and try to be what I studied, a theater major, a theater actor.
So at Carnegie, did Carnegie Mellon open doors for you on the stage when you got to New York?
Absolutely.
It did.
Well, the reason you go to schools like Carnegie, Juilliard, NYU, Yale, Northwestern,
Northwestern, yeah.
they have a thing called leagues at the end of the 4 years where you audition for casting directors, producers, agents, especially managers, and you do like 2 one-minute scenes that best illustrates you and shows you off to, so they sign you, or they, so at the end of 4 years you go to New York, or we went to just New York, and now they do both, LA and New York, and you audition, and it's really stressful, and then you go, they throw this big party for you, and you get this list of all the people that attended, and it tells you if they were interested in you, like send headshot, make an appointment, audition.
You're kidding.
And there are some people, and you go to school for 4 years, and then you're at this party, everybody's getting drunk, you get the sheets, and then you go off in corners, and you look through the sheet, and there's some people who are crying because there's nothing, and there are some people who've got like appointment, audition, and it's a really weird thing because you study the art of drama for 4 years, and then all of a sudden you're in reality, which is nobody wants you.
Or everybody wants you.
Or everybody wants you, or in what I got was a very kind of eclectic mix of things. I started at a boutique agency because a lot of people didn't know what my ethnicity was. I was, I looked 30, even though I was 22 when I got out of college. So when I first started auditioning against 30-year-olds who had been in the business much longer than me, which is a big head start when you're trying to get jobs, because it's really about longevity. If you have talent,
time in, right.
It doesn't mean that you're going to skyrocket right away. You can never compare yourself to anybody in this business because your trajectory is completely different.
But that's very interesting because coming out of a school like that, you're bound to get a job.
But the
where
business,
other people don't get jobs.
Oh God, when people say to me,
or business school or education or those kind of schools, I mean.
But, about that stuff?
Yeah, they don't even have a group to go to talk to like you did.
Right, but what about the people who don't even have those schools and they don't even have those opportunities to audition for agents?
Did you know that when you went to Carnegie Mellon?
Yeah.
You did, so you had planned it.
I had totally planned, well, yeah. I mean, I knew that
did
Carnegie
they like you? Did they like you on those pieces of paper?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I started with boutique agents, which are smart, who sort of take care of you a little bit more.
But were you taking acting lessons and singing lessons?
Oh God, no! I spent.
You didn't?
I still owe money after 4 years of going to Carnegie Mellon. Are you kidding? And also, if 4 years at Carnegie or any of those big conservatory programs, it's like boot camp. I mean, it's like an army. 4 years of just studying.
Of everything.
I mean, you don't want to do it anymore. It's time to get out there and do it. It's not time to then, keep training. I mean, I think that's my personal
So
opinion.
do you train now?
No.
No, you don't. So one of the first jobs was Picasso at the Lapin Agile.
Le Pan Agile, yes,
Lapin,
correct.
Lapin,
Which means agile rabbit.
Lapin Agile.
Le Pan Agile, yes.
Lapin at the, I mean,
That's what we used to say, Picasso at the Lapin
Agile.
Agile. It's like Americans are like, let's go see that Hamlet with Ralph Fiennes. Because they didn't.
That's it. So, but you were an understudy, right?
I wasn't, when I first started, I
Lapin Agile.
yes, it was Steve Martin play.
Yes.
And I actually auditioned for Picasso, and I was perfect for a young, I was 23, Picasso in the play is 23. And I was like, oh, this could be like the big break that you're waiting for. Steve Martin play Picasso. I look like, part my hair, have an intense stare. And I ended up getting the understudy because they said I was too green, and I
So who did you understudy?
I understudied Picasso, Elvis,
Oh, so you had to do them all.
and that Schmendeman character who comes in and like has an
And who
invention.
was playing those leads then?
Well, the Tim Hopper, who is an actor from Steppenwolf, where they originated it.
Oh,
He
I
originated it, so they brought him to New York,
Right,
which
from Chicago,
makes
right?
sense. And here, so you learn how it is.
But that was good, wasn't it?
Oh,
for
and
you?
believe me, I went on a quadrillion times to.
Oh, did you? I was going to
yeah.
ask you,
So
how
I
many
felt
times
like-
did you go on?
Oh, I went on 30 times.
How do
over
you
the
know
course
when
of
you're
it.
going to go on?
Well, the first time I went on, the guy was late. It was the winter, and not Picasso, but the smaller part, he was late because the subways and it was snowing, and it was like, you're on, putting the costume on, put the costume
Where
on.
were you?
I was sitting there like eating a banana
So
or
you
a
go
donut.
every night?
Yeah, you have to go in to sign in, and then you're like sitting like this. You're playing cards with the other understudies. You're like, God, what is this job? I'm like sitting here.
That's what I wondered. You had to be there.
Yeah, you had to be there, and then they were like, you're going on, and you're like, costume didn't fit, and then you're like, open the door and you walk on stage, and you're like, hey, and then you're like, it's like jumping out of a plane with no parachute. And you're yelling lines, you're not listening, and you walk off, you're like, did I just do, what the hell happened?
Is that right?
That's what it felt like.
I bet it's fantastic, isn't it,
It's
to
the
look back on it?
Oh, it's
Talk about adrenaline.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
And then you did Time of My Life at Westport?
Well, that was I did that last year. And,
Oh, you just did that now. Then
just-
what happened after Picasso?
Well, I understudied, and I did little roles in like New York Undercover, that show that was on at that time, Law and Order. I did a couple episodes of Spin City when it was still out
So
there
you're
with
doing
Michael J.
TV
Fox,
things.
and I was getting small stuff until
Oh, because of your boutique agency. I see.
yeah, like
I
they can
see.
only get you so much, and
I
like
see. Yeah.
I was getting good feedback, but
I see.
it's a game. It's like you could be the best painter in the world, and if you're not in the right gallery, and no one sees it, nobody cares, and
really true.
and that's it. It's
You have to have.
it's a different business than it was. We romanticize those times when talent was like,
really.
but now it's like
Everybody.
if nobody
so
sees you,
many
who cares?
talented people, though. It's
Right.
like there's so many talented people.
Oh, there's so many talented people, and there's just as many not talented people.
We're going for the same thing. No fair.
So,
Okay, so how long did it take you until you got to Lincoln Center?
well, I got this random call to go meet this woman named Susan Stroman.
Did you know who she was then?
No, because I'm not a dancer.
You're not a dancer.
I didn't come from the musical theater scene, and I didn't know who she was. And they said, well, it was a workshop for this show called Contact, which they were calling a dance play.
Yeah, so why would you go? You don't dance,
Well,
you don't
'cause
sing.
they were said there's no dance. It's just you play the bartender.
Right, yeah.
You're playing a bartender
Oh,
with
right.
Boyd Gaines,
Yeah.
and the rest of them are dancers. So it's just you and Boyd that are
Oh,
talking.
right. I remember you walking across the stage. Okay, go on.
Right, and so I went in, and they said, you're the only one meeting this woman, Susan Stroman, and John Weidman, who I knew, because John wrote Assassins, and he wrote all the
yeah.
Sondheim,
Right.
Pacific Overtures, all the really great
Fantastic,
Sondheim.
yeah.
And I went in, and I read for her, and they were great, and I sort of didn't care, because I'd been understudying, and I was like just fooling around with them, and joking around, and then I got home, and they were like, you got this workshop, and which is just a workshop. You
That
get
still
paid
doesn't
$200 a
mean-
week for 4 weeks. What's that? I was making more waitering tables.
Oh, I was going to ask you. You did waiter tables.
I waited tables for 1 year from 94 to 95. And
At a
then
good
since
place?
then, yeah, it was a sports bar.
So that was a good place for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I only had to work Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and I made about $300 to $400 those 3
And
days.
so here you are in a workshop.
So here I'm in a workshop going, well, it's just a workshop, but whatever, it's better than waitering. So I got this thing, we did the workshop, it went really well. They said we picked it up for the little off-Broadway house at the Lincoln Center, Mitzi Newhouse.
Right.
And we workshopped the other piece with Karen Ziemba where I played the mean Italian husband. The show's already going. We each get paid $750, favored nation, Boyd Gaines, everybody, all of us. We get this rave review from Ben Brantley. They extend the show, double our salary, tell us that we're going to Broadway upstairs in a month. They pay us that month off. And you know, you have a Broadway gig for, I finally had
How
a
long
bank
were you
account.
there? How long?
Well, the show was there for 2 years. I was there for about a year and a half.
And how did you feel
Oh, it
every
was-
day,
well,
a year,
I
for a
lived
year
on-
and a half?
It was amazing. I lived on the Upper West Side. I walked to work. I was about a 15-minute walk. And it was phenomenal.
And the play was Contact, was like one of the biggest things. All they ever talked about was the girl in the yellow dress.
Girl in the Yellow Dress.
The girl in the yellow dress, and Susan Stroman, and people, and you were nominated for a supporting actor.
In the Drama Desk Award,
Yes, in the Drama Desk Awards.
Our show won a Tony. Boyd and Karen Ziemba both won Tonys.
Fantastic. You were working with the top of Broadway, right?
Yeah.
And how long have you been out of school then?
I graduated in '94, so
And that was
5 years. We started
Yeah.
in '99.
That's fantastic. And then after Spielberg saw the play?
So one random night, I come out of the dressing room, and this girl comes up to me and says, "Can I have your autograph?" And I'm signing it, and I look up, and I see Steven Spielberg and his
Did
wife,
you recognize
Kate Capshaw. Oh, of course. They're walking by to in the secret area where you get the town cars for the famous people. And I'm signing this thing, and I see them, and I was like, maybe I should say, "Hey, Steven." Why not? Like, you never get to audition for him. So the next day I call my agents and I say, you know, just if this means anything, you know, Steven Spielberg was there last night. So if I ever have to audition, he'll know that he's seen me in something.
Right.
They're like, "That's great. Oh my God, that's great." And they hang up the phone. I was like, whatever. And I go and eat oatmeal or whatever I could afford, or sushi because I had some salary, so I could get sushi.
Right.
And I get this random call saying, "Spielberg's people just called." And I was like, "Shut up. They didn't call. It's because I said that you're joking around." They're like, "No, seriously." They called and said, "He's interested in you for this next movie that's starring Tom Cruise called Minority Report." And I was like, "Oh, it's about minorities, like in downtown LA.
I'm perfect.
I'm perfect. He doesn't know what I am, so he's probably like," and like, "No, it's a sci-fi movie." And I was like, "That's my favorite sci-fi." And I was like, "Oh, it's Philip K. Dick who wrote the short story, who wrote the basis for Blade Runner, which is my favorite movie."
No matter what it was your
No matter
favorite.
what it was, I was like, "Give me lines. It's Steven Spielberg." I don't care. Like when you're starting off, you know, it's not like you're going to go do porn because somebody's offering it to you. But that's, I mean, my first movie really was the Spielberg movie.
So that was
with
fantastic.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah, so how good is that? You're on Broadway with Susan Stroman and Karen Ziemba.
And Boyd Gaines and Ziemba and
now you're in movies with Spielberg and Tom Cruise.
And because of that movie, I left the show because it was a 2-week commitment and the show would only let me go out for 1 week. So I was like, I'm leaving.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah, I was like, come on.
That was fantastic, though. I mean, for me to remember you, because your role was so good. You looked great.
Oh, thanks.
On stage, you did.
Well, that's good.
It was. I remember that. Even if Spielberg didn't see you when you waved at him.
No. Why? In my head, I waved at him.
Oh, in your head, you waved at him. Okay. But before we leave, you're now directing and writing and producing a movie or a film or a play or what?
In the meantime, you know, I've been doing other jobs, movies, and television. I did some theater still, and I've been interested in creating because I've always been a creator, and I've been a painter for 20 years and a musician, and I wrote and directed a 20-minute short film called Jesus Cooks Me Breakfast, which is a surreal comedy about an aloof man who gets visited by the Son of God who cooks him breakfast and in the meantime tells him that his dad, God, is missing and he wants him to find him. Short
stories, short films.
It's a short film, which is difficult.
Those are very, very, very important now, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're like docs. I just did a short film. Everybody's doing them.
Yeah.
All the celebrities are doing them. Just to do what? To prove that you can make
well,
a story?
for years you're like, well, you watch stuff and you're like, well, that's not great. And you see stuff and you see good stuff and it inspires you, and you see bad stuff and you're like, what am I sitting down on my ass for all these years? I've been creating my whole life. Why don't I create something that doesn't necessarily, you're not going to sell it or make money off of it, but it's going to be a creative endeavor that's going to, you know, charge my life and charge my creativity. And now, you know, we're developing it as a feature. We've opened
That's
it up
what
as a
happens,
feature.
right? You start with a short film and then you try to create
Right. Yeah, and you try, it's like, okay, enough, you have to motivate. You know, when you don't have a teacher telling you that your exam is due, a lot of people we know, they want someone to tell them what to do and then they'll do the work, but the hardest thing is self-motivation, and when I can motivate, it's still hard, but
Yeah, you have to do it
it feels
yourself.
better than any job that you've ever been hired to do because you're doing it, you're creating it.
Well, I'm so glad you came and told us about everything today.
Oh, please,
Thank you.
It's so good to meet you.
Thank you. It was great having you. And I did see Woodstock, and I do remember you barely in
I
one
think
of
I'm
those
cut out of
scenes.
the movie, though.
Are you, Abby?
I played Abby Hoffman, and it wasn't in the
Oh,
script.
Taking Woodstock.
Taking Woodstock,
Yeah.
and I did a couple cameos where I'm yelling and screaming, but I think they cut me out.
But you did get to work with Ang Lee.
Yeah, that was interesting.
That
He was an
was good.
interesting, nice man.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much,
Thank
Jason.
you, Joan, of course.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with Chuck Pelletier. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with singer-songwriter Chuck Pelletier, who was born in California but raised in Illinois. He earned his Bachelor of Arts in Music at the University of Illinois and went on to study at the Oxford University in England. He performed in and around Chicago as a solo act and with various bands, and then moved to Los Angeles, where he continued his music. Chuck has written 3 musicals, a score for film, stage, and he stayed hard at work writing songs all the way along, right, Chuck?
That's right.
So you started music at a very young age.
I did. My father was a self-taught piano player. He played in San Francisco in the piano bars there.
Oh.
So he taught me a little bit at a very young age about how to play. And
Did he sing too?
he did a little bit of singing, and the family always sang around the piano. That's kind of where I grew up, in that sort of world where music was just in the house all the time.
I see.
And my father was never one to teach like lessons or music. He always played by ear, so he let me learn by ear, and I think that's part of my influence.
Is that how you learned, by ear?
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
what does he do? You listen to the music and then you just sit down and start playing it? How do you
Yes,
do
that's
that?
basically it. I always grew up in a world where that was just what people could do. My father would hear a Beatles song when I would be, playing Elton John or the Eagles or something, and he would sit down at the piano after I had played it on the stereo, and he would play the song. So
Is that right?
it never seemed strange to me. So I thought, well, that's what you should be able to do.
How does that talent come? Where does that talent come from?
I don't know, but I think part of it is just nobody telling you can't do that. If you grow up believing that you can, then you just sort of fiddle with it until you can.
Could he do it on, say, a guitar?
My father didn't play guitar. My older sister played guitar. And
Same way, by ear?
Yes, exactly the same way, and just picked it up by ear and learned a few chords and started writing her own songs. And again, I grew up in this world where people were writing songs around me, so I thought, oh, if Sister Teresa can write songs, I guess I can too.
Is that? So when you were doing your solo act, what kind of an act were you doing?
I do folk acoustic rock music.
I see.
And then more recently I was in a couple country bands. Modern country has become a lot like acoustic rock of the 70s and 80s when I grew up.
So what kind of music, like what?
Well, see, stylistically,
Mixed, yeah.
I've always been sort of living between two worlds, because the acoustic guitar player in me and the piano player in me has always been out at coffee houses, at bars, playing in rock bands, in folk bands.
But with a band.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, or on my own, just with an acoustic guitar in a coffee house.
And if you did that, did you sing with it?
Always.
Oh, always.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've always been
Even in the band you sang?
correct. Yeah,
Okay,
I've
okay.
always been someone who just uses a guitar and piano to accompany my own singing.
I see.
But even since freshman year in high school, I've lived this other life on stage. I started to get into musical comedy productions at the high school that I went to.
Acting in them? Or
Yes,
writing?
acting in them and singing.
Singing?
And that side of me always made me want to write musicals, but because of the fact that I had always learned rock music, folk music, around about 10 years ago I decided, well, what I should be doing is taking my songwriting abilities and putting that sort of songwriting into musicals. So that's how my musicals sort of differ. They're more modern music.
But that's how your music are. What influenced you? You've written hundreds of songs. What influences your lyrics?
Well, the best lyricists of musical, my favorite, I should say, my favorite lyricists in musical comedy are Howard Ashman.
Oh, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, obviously Stephen Sondheim, and Oscar Hammerstein, and also Jonathan Larson, I think is a
From
wonderful-
Rent?
Right.
So personal. So it's like from a
Yes.
personal point of view?
Absolutely, yeah. But influences to me outside musical comedy have had a way bigger impact, and my influences have been Bernie Taupin, who wrote all the lyrics for Elton John.
Yeah.
Don Henley and the other
Really?
writers in the Eagles, of course Lennon and McCartney.
But all those lyricists are influenced by, you think, other lyricists? And because you're influenced by those lyricists. What's the
Absolutely.
background there?
Well, you know,
It's kind of-
if you sort of trace modern rock music, I think the people in the like early '60s that were real innovators, like Bob Dylan was a real innovator, and obviously Lennon and McCartney, Paul Simon. These people really took things in different directions, and I think the good writers of the '70s, the Harry Chapin, Cat Stevens, James Taylors, Joni Mitchell, they sort of took it just beyond that next level, and as you know, the people that are writing now, I think it's our job to see what they've done and then kind of expand on that.
Well, that's really interesting, because you've given us a wide range of artists that you like. I think it's fantastic. You studied with William Warfield. You're singing. I mean, an opera
Yes.
singer, a bass. Was he a bass singer?
Absolutely.
Where was that?
That was at the University of Illinois. I was just fortunate enough to be there
Fantastic.
when he was on staff, and there were a whole myriad of great teachers. But
Oh,
I
and that's-
immediately,
Go on.
well, I immediately knew that I wanted to go into musical comedy. So I wanted to study with William Warfield. So I went in there in day one and said, I got to study with William Warfield. That's why I'm here.
That's fantastic. And so that was your singing study. And
Right.
then Alice Parker helped with.
Yes, Alice Parker was a teacher of composition and choral arranging, who was very influential to me. She did all the arranging for Robert Shaw, the Robert Shaw Chorale, and I just love her attitude. I'm constantly quoting a quote that she gave us in class, which was, "Great performances are great exactly to the extent that they differ from the printed page."
So they have to come off the page and be something.
Right. So you're writing something that's just a
Right.
shell.
Right.
It's
the
something.
person who's doing it.
Yeah,
But
right.
at that point, being influenced by Alice Parker helped in your musicals too,
Absolutely. Yeah.
with the choral thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that makes my three musicals very alike is that they all have a lot of choral arranging. In fact, The Green Room is a 4-character musical, and probably 6 of the songs are 4-part harmonies. There's a Manhattan Transfer song, a barbershop tune, an a cappella old school song. And I love 4-part harmony. I always have. So a lot of my writing influences that.
And then Roque Cordero.
Yeah, he at the Illinois State University. I worked with, studied under Roque for several years. He was a Panamanian composer that was much more classically oriented.
So these people that you talked about studying with seem to have like really come into play when you started writing musicals, like Sour Grapes and The Boy Who Stood Still, and The Green Room. And you started with children's, right? And then when you got to The Green Room, what was it, high school and college?
It's interesting. It's sort of an evolution.
I was looking at that, yeah. Is that the way it happened, really?
Well, somewhat, yeah. The Boy Who Stood Still was actually a project that started from an idea I had in college to write an a cappella musical for a barbershop quartet I was singing in.
But a musical, that's a long...
Yeah, an a cappella musical, so there would be no instruments. And I sort of wrote that musical, but it never got done. And I realized there was a real great gem of an idea there. So I kind of got together with a book writer named Marina Ames on that and fleshed that out. The Green Room.
Did you, when you wrote The Green Room, did you use the guitar? Did you use this guitar?
The Green Room is at least half guitar based, and that's what people say is very different from The Green Room. The two book writers, C. Stephen Foster and Rod Damer, are always telling me that what makes The Green Room different from most musicals is that most musicals sound like they were written on a piano, and The Green Room sounds like it was written on a guitar.
So if you pick this up, what would you do? Just start, I mean, would you play a note, or would you play a whole song, or how would you do that?
Well, I would kind of get into the mood of what I was writing. The opening song for The Green Room, for example, is a song about two college-age sophomore girls that are just really frustrated with the theater department. So that ended up, you know, what kind of song? Very modern and
Did they
kind
use
of
the
evocative.
guitar?
Yeah, the band consists of a guitar, a bassist, a drummer, and a piano player.
And it opened here in L.A. or in...
Opened at the Hermosa Beach Playhouse.
Yeah.
That was the world premiere.
Yeah.
And then right now it's playing it closed at Hermosa Beach, but we got great reviews. And then moved up to Sacramento, and it's now playing at the California Stages at Sacramento.
Which is fantastic. You know, nobody thinks about Sacramento, but they have fantastic musical theater going on there.
I was amazed because the Hermosa cast was just fabulous.
Did you cast it up there then, with people from up there?
Yeah, they did. We didn't have anything to do with the Sacramento casting, and we went up there to see them, and I was just blown away. Because
so you didn't have anything to do with casting. Did you do it here at Hermosa Beach?
At Hermosa Beach, I was the musical director.
Oh, so
yeah.
You conducted and you
Right.
cast.
Stephanie Coltrane directed, and I was the musical director.
I see.
So I had a lot to do with the casting.
I see.
And we found 4 great singers, but we're in Los Angeles, you know. So,
and then up there?
And up there, I didn't have anything to do with it. We went to opening night, and there we sat, and I expected, well, at Sacramento, what will you find in Sacramento? And I found just 4 amazing singers.
Isn't that
Just,
great?
and in both productions, singers and actors that really understood the material, the idea behind The Green Room of 4 college-age students who are theater majors that are trying to get through college and onto the Broadway stage.
Oh, and that's fantastic.
It's like a cross between Rent and a Mickey and Judy musical.
So I can see everything that you've said today has really come full circle in The Green Room.
I guess so.
Yeah. And now we're going to wait for you to do some more film scores, because you've done some scoring and you've had many of your pieces in films, your songs in films, but now you have to write another score.
Okay.
Okay? Thanks,
Love that.
Chuck.
Thank you, Joan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles today. Keep writing, 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles, 90017. But email JAQUINN, the numeral 1, at AOL.com. See you next time.